Nice to see you all this morning. As I came in first thing in the morning, I was like looking around. That's what we do. You are a seriously intimidating, badass audience. This is like high pressure up here, and to follow Kelly is really, she's a stunning speaker, and she really sets the tone for what we're going to talk about today. I am Anne Choquette. I've had this very long view of the changing tastes and values and things that are important to young women. I was the editor-in-chief of 17 for 7 years, as Claudia mentioned, and before that, I was one of the founding editors of Cosmo Girl. If you remember, shout out to Cosmo Girl. Yes, of course. And one of the things that I think is stunning is that this generation of young women, millennial women, I have never seen a generation that is as ambitious and hungry for success as this generation. It's really been an amazing transformation that, the young women say they want to start internships in high school, they want to start businesses in college, they are sort of voraciously seeking out women to ask them the secrets of their success. And the way in which they define success, which is what we're going to talk about today, has completely changed. That there's no longer this idea of the climb of up the ladder. There is no ladder. That this is a career built on having a job and a side hustle and a passion project and reach goals and collaboration. These women here are perfect examples of the way things have changed. And one of the other sort of amazing things that has changed is the symbols of our success. This idea that even when Kelly mentioned it, the idea of what a CEO looks like has changed. The idea of the corner office, heels propped on a glossy desk, that idea is gone. This generation of young women doesn't care about shoes, which I can't understand. But they don't. They would much rather be sitting in a co-working space with a bunch of friends and a MacBook Air. And that's what success and power looks like to this generation of young women. So I want to start with Tiffany, and who has this amazing window on young women. And I just want to start by talking about what does success mean for this generation of young women?
Yeah, it's a big question, and I tell you, I come at it from a different vantage point. I am not a millennial, full disclaimer. I'm a Gen Xer, but I'm a Gen Xer who works in a company that was founded and is run by millennials. And it's an experience that has changed my life, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. We definitely are seeing at Levo, which if you don't know, is a platform for millennials to help them elevate their careers, that success is definitely being redefined. We just published a list of Levo 100, which are 100 millennials who are innovating, and they're redefining success as passion and purpose, which I know we're going to talk about, as impact, this whole idea that what you do is far less important than the value that you create, and having a career that really is about achieving impact and making a difference in the world. But one of the things that has really made an impact on me is this idea of sustainability and what it means to work sustainably. I came from a generation that defined work ethic as basically working yourself to death. I used to work 24/7, and I'll never forget when I came to Levo, one of the big aha moments that I had was at my first performance review meeting. It was with our CEO, Caroline Gohn, and at my performance meeting, I talked about all of the wonderful things that I had done and all of the things that I had achieved, and Caroline shook her head and she said, yeah, she said, all that's great, you've hit that out of the ballpark. She said, but I do have one concern. And I was quiet because I couldn't possibly think of what concern she could have. She says to me, Tiffany, I don't think you get enough sleep. And my breath was a little bit taken away because I've never had a baby boomer boss or a member of the silent generation boss tell me that I didn't get enough sleep as part of my performance feedback. In fact, as long as I achieved my goals, I was good to go. I was the superstar. And that conversation led to my performance plan, which was literally to get 8 hours of sleep for 8 weeks in a row.
I mean, what do you do with all that sleep?
What do you do with all of that sleep?
You probably perform a lot better.
And it changed the way
Yeah.
that I work. I actually did it. I had to do it. And I'm going to be really honest, because sometimes when I talk to Gen Xers or baby boomers about that story, they say, but isn't that an invasion of your personal space or of your privacy? Remember, we think yesterday, they're thinking forward. And isn't that problematic?
To even have a boss that thinks about your personal life.
Yes,
your,
exactly,
your
because there's
beyond,
a divide,
yeah.
exactly, because in the old model, we think of work and life as very separate, okay? And so, and I actually had a similar reaction, especially because of where I was in my life stage. At that point, I was the only person at the company that had children. I had other responsibilities. I had been working this way a long time, and I really felt like there was a lack of understanding about all the demands on me, to which Caroline then responded as soon as I thought of that, if you need to sleep at work, that's fine, right? We'll take a couch, you can sleep, but somehow you've got to get more sleep. Either way, I learned a ton over those 8 weeks. At the end of the 8 weeks, of course, the biggest aha moment was that I had been exhausted for 10 years. I just didn't know that I was. So she was absolutely right. But I think one of the other important lessons for me was weeks later after I had done this exercise, I had one of the women in the office come up to me and say, hey, I heard about how Caroline made you get more sleep, and I heard that it's had a great impact on you, and I heard that you thanked Caroline, and I just wanted you to know that all of us in the office really appreciate it, and we really needed that. And I said, well, why did you need me to get more sleep? Was I that? She said, well, Tiffany, it's because we look up to you. They said, we all want a career that's aligned with our passion and our purpose, and we all want juicy marriages, and we all want really cute kids, and we want to serve on nonprofit boards and speak and do all of these things, but none of us want to do that on 4 hours of sleep a night. And so you've shown us that it's possible to have that life, but also to be well rested. So I say all of that to say that that's a very different model.
Yes.
I just read Anne-Marie Slaughter's book, Unfinished Business, which I encourage all of you to read. And she talks about the future of work. And she talks about workplaces and employers that actually care about their people and believe in sustainability. But all I have to say is I'm living the future right now, and I really do believe that we have a generation of entrepreneurs that get it. I think it will make a difference in the lives of many, many people.
There was that joke on Saturday Night Live about the Miley Cyrus, this joke where there was a nap room. Where's the nap room? And I think that and everybody was like, ha, 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 the nap room. But wait, maybe we need a nap room. We need a nap room.
Yes.
Well, in the context of in the context of work and how it's changing, if I was to give you a quick kind of analogy to remember and think in terms of how the mindset's switching, is classically we used to live to work. Like that was our ends meet, that was our goal, that's our life. Millennials, and you'll see Generation Z particularly, their mindset is they work to live. Work is a means to sustain their other passions and interests and their life goals. So I think that's kind of where the perspective is of integrating.
And I think that's a really important point to talk about how the way things have changed, but also to talk about how there is not such a divide between your personal life and your work life, and that they all come together, and that's okay. I would love to hear Stephanie talk about that a little bit, about I'm always surprised when young women say to me, what's work-life balance? I don't know exactly what it means anymore. Mm-hmm. But you seem to have, seem to be at the front lines of this conversation with young women at her campus, and also seem to have sort of figured it out a little bit for yourself. I hear so often your women are like, I'm never gonna get married, I'm never gonna have babies, how am I gonna figure all this out? Do you wanna talk a little bit about what you see, that change?
Sure. So, Windsor, Annie, and I founded our company when we were undergrads at Harvard and have been running it now for the past 5 years since then. And many people are often surprised when they hear that the three of us have all gotten married during this time, that we had this kind of fledgling startup where they're like, isn't that just 24/7? Aren't you just working all the time? How do you find time to date, let alone
But isn't it 24/7?
So I think it is and it isn't. On the one hand, I'm hardly ever turned off from work. The truth is that the 3 of our honeymoons were the only 3 times that we literally, weren't checking email, weren't responsible for things, truly delegated things to our employees.
Not even once when you're on the beach, you're like, I just need to check
Right,
my email.
No, I did check some email when I was on the beach at my honeymoon, but I didn't have to reply. I was kind of off the hook. But at the same time, the nature of a startup is that it is more flexible too. So I don't have to be sitting in the office in order to get my work done every day. And then, for example, for me in my personal life, my husband is a shift worker. He's an emergency medicine doctor, which is basically pure shift work. You're either on and you're working or you're off. So we've been able to set up a really nice schedule where when he's off work, we'll travel and we'll go places. I have my computer with me, I'm checking my email throughout the day and I'm keeping up with the office, but we're able to take advantage of the time that he has off and kind of not make it so that one of us is just always working and we can never go away. And I think another key thing that I've found that helps me to kind of move away from work, because it's tough, the work is never done, there's always more you can do, and you're really excited about your work, you love it, so you don't want to stop doing it, but I think taking on personal commitments that, 1, are really meaningful to you, but 2, are actually true commitments that you can't kind of pull out of, is one way to make sure that you maintain that balance. So for me, last year, I trained for and ran the Boston Marathon, which was my first time running a marathon. And if any of you run a marathon, you know that once you commit to it, you have to stick to that training plan or else you literally will not be able to run the marathon come Marathon Monday. So, and that entails these runs, they get so long. You're talking like 2, 3, 4-hour runs that you're doing on the weekends, recovery days, but I made a commitment. I was fundraising for a cause. I had put it out there publicly. I was going to get charged for the money personally if I didn't fundraise it in time, and I had to get from point A to point B on Marathon Monday. So that was a really great way that forced me to, get out of the office. I had something in my personal life I was passionate about, and that I kind of couldn't pull out of it. I had to do it. And of course, I was so glad I did, and that time for me was so well spent out of the office. But had it just been, oh, I think I should go to the gym today, or I should go on a run today, it would have been a lot easier to cancel on it. So I think kind of nailing down outside commitments that you have to hold yourself to can be a really nice way to help strike that balance.
And do you think that the young women who are in the Her Campus network, that they are imagining a new way to work and a new way to have their life and their work come together, or work-life integration, which we've talked about? It seems like great in theory, but does that work in practice? Do they feel empowered to imagine a new way to work in the world?
I think they definitely do. I think women feel like they don't want to have to sacrifice things in their work life or in their personal life, that they should be able to have both. And I think, that's a great way to feel, that you can have it all, because I think, it is possible. It's that work-life integration, like you mentioned, because obviously, we all want to lean in and have these big careers and not feel like we're pulling back. But as you were mentioning earlier, Anne, people don't want to feel like, oh, then that means I can't get married or I can't have kids, because that's really sad too if that's something that's important to you in your life. So I think college women these days are absolutely looking for flexible workplaces when they're looking for jobs. They're asking those questions during the interview process. They're really evaluating companies based on what kind of care they take of their employees, both in terms of their personal lives as well as things like professional development programming. Yeah. They want a company that will really take care of them.
And do you see that, Tiffany, that in the companies, as you're talking about the changing workplace, that that companies are evolving and adapting to this new way that young women want to work? Are they listening?
They're trying to, right? They're trying to. One of the, and they need support and they need guidance from those of us who they're looking to for that.
I hear very often about millennial task forces, so I hear that
Yes.
they are actually tapping,
Yes.
particularly young women, and saying, what do you need? How can we help you?
Yes, and the ones that really have to compete are starting to change and are starting to adapt, but it's very difficult because they have, especially large companies, a lot of senior people who did it the old way and are very committed to the old model. One of the things that I really appreciate about Levo is this whole idea of having something else that you're doing. And I remember when I first came to Levo, I found it such a conflict of interest, right? Because of course I was thinking the old model, like, what do you mean she has a blog and she's monetizing it? Like, but isn't she going to take traffic away from Levo, right? There was this conflict. It was like, why does everybody have a side hustle? And of course now when I go to companies who are constantly setting up policies and procedures to try to prevent their millennial talent from having a side hustle, I say to them, I'm just going to be real with you. you are the side hustle.
Right.
Okay?
How many, can we do a show of hands of like how many people out here have a side hustle? How many of you have, I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah, so it's really thinking about, if I'm the side hustle, if the company is the side hustle, what can we do to be more creative, and what can we do in order to adapt the workplace? It is happening, but it's happening slowly.
I think the key to the side hustle is it lets you explore a passion, right, that maybe your traditional job doesn't let you do. And a lot of times when you're just starting out, you need a traditional job, so you learn the rules, right? You learn the ropes. Kelly, I would love for you to talk a little bit about this idea of having a purpose-driven career and finding your passion.
Yes, well, I think it really kind of integrates really into what we were just talking about. Rather than work-life balance, what I'm seeing is work-life integration, where work and life somewhat become a little bit of one, or the lines blur. When you find this generation, if you look at millennials, and you'll see it particularly as you move into the Generation Z, is that we're very passion-driven. We want to have, we want more than just work. We want to see impact. We want to have
Do good in the world.
We want to do good in the world, but we want to see some meaningful impact, and we want to see meaningful impact of our employers too. And we want to grow. We're not going to just work our way up the ladder. We want to continue to our goals. So particularly when we're talking about some of the traits here about kind of the flexibility in the workforce and things like that, if you're looking at millennials, if you look at the top 3 factors of who they choose their employer, it's personal development, work-life flexibility, and salary. Which of those do you think is on top? Personal development comes in at number 1, flexibility comes in at number 2, and salary comes in at 3. Very different than what Generation X is. So with that in mind, to get into kind of the headspace of a young professional, we're looking at you as, like you said, like a side hustle, a pit stop on our longer journey to our goal, which is X, Y, and Z. It could be multiple things. It's no longer just that corner office. But having that concept of passion and purpose, and seeing how you can infuse passion for your employees into the work that they're doing. So instead of just being a side hustle, what if your company now becomes a place that supports the side hustles of your employees, and now fosters that innovation to a point where you can use that innovation back to your company? Maybe they develop new things that can advance your own products and services.
I think it's really hard when you're young and just starting out to do what you just said, which is imagine that you've got this longer career ahead of you, right? That you're not just there to like have a job and do your job. And that, I think, is a real change, this idea of twists and turns in a career, that your career is not going to be linear as it has been for generations in the past.
Yeah, and now not all young professionals already have what that end is going to look like, but they have that mentality that they know they're going to be shifting.
Well, I love the conversation this morning on the first panel about your personal brand, which was about not having a 5-year plan. Who knows what the world is going to be like. And I thought to myself, oh, thank God, because I don't have a 5-year plan. I was like, cool, I'm in. But I think that that's right? This idea, like, who could possibly have imagined where we are today? The one thing that I thought was so interesting in your keynote that you said was about your personal brand, right? That your look is part of your personal brand. And that's a crazy new idea, that you come to your first or second job with your own brand, right? That you've already been branding yourself on Twitter. You might have a business on Etsy, that you probably have a YouTube channel where it represents your personal brand. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about how that helps?
Well, in many ways, young professionals are forced to have a personal brand, in the sense that if you look at the rates of youth unemployment, they always have to find a way to differentiate themselves, right? It's all about marketing themselves in that interview to get that job in the first place. But it could be a flip side too, because some don't acknowledge the impact of their personal brand on their corporate work or their career, so to speak, where they might be doing a YouTube series on something that completely goes against maybe what the company is that they're trying to apply for a job for. So they need to I think it's a two-way street on that one with personal
So there's some
brands.
danger in having a
There-
personal brand.
No, you should have one, but I think you need to be conscious of your social voice, is what I'm saying. A lot of the times we forget that the social voice can contribute to our personal brand. We think that that's just kind of on the side, but that's documented, people find it, and employers look at it. The very first thing an employer does before they're going to hire you is they're going to look at your LinkedIn and look at your social channels, see if they can find a social footprint. And what does that represent? And so I would challenge young professionals to look at that and see, does that embody who I am? Does that embody my true values? And so on to a point, because that's going to be really your first impression.
Tiffany, you mentioned that you were a role model for young women, talking about being on corporate boards and having a family and having a job and doing your own side hustle. How do you take this idea of like personal brand and round out your career, right? Round out all the other pieces. How do we get young people to think like that?
Yeah. Well, first I would make, sometimes when we talk about passion and purpose and brand, they kind of get collapsed into one another. So I just want to make the distinction. I mean, my life's work is advancing women and girls. That's
Amen.
why I'm on the planet. Every professional job that I've had, that's been my highest allegiance, whether I've helped to start a girls' school or whether I've worked at a women's college or whether I've run a national nonprofit or whether I've worked at a technology company. Everybody at any of those places could tell you Tiffany is here to advance women and girls. That is my passion, and that's a big part of my purpose and what drives me. That is separate from my brand, okay? Your brand is the conversation that people have about you. And the conversation that people have about you is based on their experience with you, whether it's virtually through social or whether it's in person. And the in-person part is very important because if people experience you one way in one context, but you don't deliver that experience in person, then you're in a little bit of trouble. So my brand is the consistent experience that people have had when they come into contact with me, whether it's on this panel, whether it's on Twitter, but more importantly for me personally, it's when I interact with you, right? When we have coffee or when we work together. You know that I'm driven, you know that I'm passionate, and you have a sense of the difference that I want to make in the world. You can certainly change and shift, and you have a lot of agency over your brand, over the conversation that people have about you. And I'll tell one of my most important lessons that I learned from Carla Harris, who all of you should know in the room if you don't know. She's at Morgan Stanley. Years ago, she told a story about how she didn't get the promotion that she wanted, and when she got feedback about why she didn't get the promotion, it was connected to people's perception of her, the conversation they were having about her, and they essentially they saw her as a hard worker, but didn't see her as having the grit, right, or the toughness that would be required in order to really be the banker that they saw you should be. And she was really taken aback by that, because if there was anything that this young black woman, who was one of the few to ever even get into the investment banking programs, it was tough. And she knew that. And she went on essentially a campaign to redefine her brand as being associated with toughness. And all that Carla Harris did was use the word all the time. My team is tough. This project is tough. You know I'm tough. And she just kept saying that over and over and over again. And she said years later, she was so delighted when she got into an elevator and she moved to the back. She said 2 men got into the elevator, and of course they turned their back, so she was, in the back. And one of them said to the other, "Where are you going?" And the other one says, "Oh, I'm going up to meet Carla Harris." Clearly they didn't know the black woman in the back of the elevator was Carla Harris. And the other one says, "Oh, well, you better have your stuff together because I heard she's tough." Right? And so one of the things that you can do to really have agency over your brand is to message the consistent experience that you want people to have with you, which I think is so important. My colleagues at Levo, when I told them that I was coming here, decided that they would make a very special offer to the She Summit community, because we do have a tool that helps you with your brand and helps you to tell your story and the consistent experience people can have about you. So if you just go to levo.com/She www.levo.com/SheSummit. You can get access to someone on the team will help you with your brand and with telling your story, but more importantly, they'll even help you get exposure on our platform. And I have to say, if you're an entrepreneur or someone who really wants to get your brand out there, you should take them up on the offer, because big brands pay a lot of money to get exposure on the Levo platform. So just go to levo.com/SheSummit.
I mean, I don't know if millennials need so much help with their brands. I feel like it's almost like they're born a brand. I'm working on my own personal brand. My brand is badass, and so I appreciate all of you being here today and having this badass conversation. I'm continuing the conversation on my website, anneshowket.com, so I hope that you will all sign up and join the conversation with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claudia Chan, and I'm the founder of She Summit. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and community. At She Summit, we believe there is a leader and change agent inside everyone, and our goal is to unleash you to lead change from where you are for issues that you care about to benefit your life, your family, your workplace, and even the world. There's so many ways to follow us if you're interested in this leadership content. You can actually subscribe to this YouTube channel, of course, but also visit our website where you can sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community, new leadership courses that we're rolling out, and our 2019 She Summit conference. And I also just launched a podcast based on my book. It's called the How We Rise Leadership Podcast. So please follow us. There's so many ways to follow us. And I'm so excited for you to join our new generation of leaders to lead change again for our lives and for the world.